If you want love from this lady, you just need to have money. But who is this lady? And how did she become like this? Her name is Adir, and worker at a nightclub where wealthy men love to go and buy women. Her boss, called Captain, trusts her a lot because he knows that no customer can resist Adir due to her stunning looks. She is the Mona Lisa of seduction, a masterpiece that left patrons breathless. She also loves sewing women clothes. Now, one day Captain told her that there is a rich man who wants pleasure. Adir replied that she's not in the mood, but Captain's orders were chains that bound her. Then Adir went to seduce the client. After a while, Adir came back to Captain's room. She is disheveled and pushed to the edge by that customer. Captain approaches her, and Adir asks Captain to give her pleasure because she was dissatisfied by the customer. Things got heated, and the room crackled with tension, the kind that ignites wildfires. In the middle of the night, Captain was sleeping. Adir woke up, grabbed some money, and she tiptoed out of Captain's lair. The next day, Adir was in a car leaving town to start a new life. Destination? Oyo Town, where new beginnings awaited like unopened gifts. She rented a house and moved in. She seemed like that house very much. On the other hand, at a church in that same town, the pastor's name was Midya, and the pastor's wife was called Folashad. The people of that town were very devoted to the church. Now, there was a girl named Abini who got pregnant, and she is seen as a very sinful person. Shunned and scorned, she carried her sin like a scarlet letter. Meanwhile, at night we encounter a couple, Salawa and her husband, Toby. Toby was a heavy drinker, frequently coming home intoxicated, exhausted, and passing out without even touching his wife. Salawa, fed up with his behavior, gave him the cold shoulder in their marriage. One day, Adir went to the market to buy a few things for her new house. After prayers at the church, the pastor's wife harshly criticized all the women there. The pastor's wife had a daughter named Simi. Simi approached Abini, a girl who was shunned for getting pregnant. Her mother, pastor's wife, saw them, chased Simi away, and began scolding Abini and forbidding her from attending church on Sunday. During the night, Adir continued with her night job. She is dressed up and went to a nearby club, where she met Toby, Salawa's husband. Adir wasn't concerned with morals. Her interest lay in money. So they entered a room and they were intimate. After they finished, Toby thanked her sincerely. The next day, news about Adir spread like wildfire at Toby's workplace. Everyone wanted, but only Toby had experienced her charms. At home, Salawa tried to keep Toby from leaving by giving him alcohol, but when the alcohol ran out, Toby ran off again. Salawa followed her husband and discovered he was heading to Adir's place. Concerned, she and others took the issue to the pastor's wife, who called a meeting. They reported an unknown woman who was seducing their husbands. The pastor's wife suggested they confront her and force her out of town. Some women hesitated, but Salawa was determined to go alone. That night, Salawa tiptoed through the moonlit streets like a tipsy ninja. Her mission? To confront Adir, the mysterious husband stealer. But fate had other plans. As she stumbled inside Adir's house, she accidentally knocked over a pot. The clatter echoed like a guilty conscience, which startled Adir. Adir, eyes wide like a startled cat, came out to see what had happened. Salawa introduced herself, then she slurred, "You are the husband snatcher?" Adir rebuked her, harshly telling her, "Darling," she drawled, "your fashion sense is the real crime here." This made Salawa cry. Adir then apologized, calmed her down, and said, "Listen, men are like Wi-Fi signals, unpredictable and prone to dropping connections." Then she offered her advice on how to keep a man. She gave Salawa a box containing a bra and some provocative clothing she had sewn herself. Salawa, bewildered but hopeful, put them on. When her husband Toby saw her in the new attire, he was taken aback, and he told her he loved it, and they were intimate. Then we are introduced to a man named Thomas. He approached Adir, seeking her companionship because he had been lonely since his wife's death a few years ago. His loneliness was thicker than Adir's sewing thread. Adir accepted his money and met him in a room. She attempted to be rough with him, but Thomas resisted, expressing his desire for simple companionship and friendship. Adir's heart wobbled. Men, she sighed, like indecisive GPS systems. One moment, recalculating route. The next, make a U-turn. Despite this, Thomas spoke words that deeply impacted Adir before he left. The following day at church, Salowa danced with such enthusiasm that people were left astonished. Her two curious friends gathered outside to hear her story. Salowa recounted how she managed to win her husband back, sharing the specific techniques she used to rekindle their relationship. The two women gasped. "Where can we buy these wonders?" "From Adir," Salowa announced. "She's the oracle of cleavage enhancement." Intrigued by her success, they flocked to Adir in search of those magical bras. Adir personalized each bra to fit the unique body shape of each woman. Back at home, these two women saved their marriages. They filled with laughter and joy. The news of Salowa's story spread quickly through the church, causing a rush of women to Adir, all eager to get their hands on the bras that promised to transform their lives. From that moment, Adir realized her dressmaking business could be more profitable. Determined, she decided to focus solely on sewing and set aside other distractions. One day, while she was busy sewing, there was a knock at the door. It was Thomas, who insisted on maintaining their friendship and brought her food as a gift. However, Adir declined, wanting to avoid any closeness. Feeling dejected, Thomas left, but Adir called him back before he went far. The following day, a group of women gathered at Adir's house, urging her to start attending church. Meanwhile, that night, Abini gave birth. Although she delivered the baby safely, she lost a significant amount of blood and died shortly after seeing the pastor's wife. Semi was sent by her mother to collect black clothes from Deji's mother for the funeral preparations. While getting the clothes, she meets Deji. We learn that Simi and Deji are lovers. In their relationship, Simi got pregnant. Deji insisted they keep the baby, but Simi feared her mother's reaction and the shame it would bring. Additionally, after witnessing Abini's death during childbirth, Simi decided it was best to terminate the pregnancy to avoid similar risks. At Abini's funeral that evening, Adir attended in a short dress that shocked the attendees. The pastor's wife, feeling embarrassed, removed her scarf and covered Adir's legs. After the service, Adir spoke with Thomas, who explained that his wife had died in an accident. Adir returned the scarf to the pastor's wife, who refused it and instead placed it around Adir's neck, saying even God understood her need for more clothes. Adir admitted she hadn't anticipated her dress would cause such a reaction. The pastor's wife accused Adir of deceiving the women in the town, calling her a devil. She then left, and Salowa advised Adir not to respond. A few days later, there was a party at Thomas's house. He took Adir to the event and introduced her to his mother. Later, Adir shared with Thomas a romantic kiss. The following day, Simi brought eggs to Adir from the pastor as an apology for the incident at church, where the pastor's wife had covered Adir. Simi appeared troubled, and Adir encouraged her to share her concerns. Simi eventually confided in Adir, who advised her to live fearlessly and seek guidance from God. Emboldened, Simi went to Deji and told him she had decided to keep the baby. The next day, Salowa visited Adir and revealed her dream of baking bread, but lamented her lack of support. Adir offered her assistance and took Salowa to the market to buy supplies, demonstrating their growing friendship. The following day, there was a gathering at Salowa's house, and Adir attended. The pastor's wife disapproved of Adir's presence and questioned Salowa about inviting her. Salowa asserted it was her house and she could invite anyone she wanted. The pastor's wife led a Bible study, but her sermon was filled with veiled insults directed at Adir. Hurt, Adir left. As she walked away, the pastor's wife remarked that sinners flee when exposed. Salowa confronted the pastor's wife, asking if she thought she was God. The women supported Salewa, and the pastor's wife left angrily. During a memorial for the deceased, the women brought various foods. The pastor's wife confronted Adir, questioning why she came without an invitation. Adir replied that she saw the invitation for all women. The pastor's wife retorted that the invitation was for women, not whores, shocking everyone. Adir responded with words that deeply affected the pastor's wife. Back home, the pastor's wife told her husband what happened. He saw no problem with Adir, saying she was only misunderstood. The pastor's wife insisted it was her church, and she had to protect it. Her husband reminded her that it was God's church, and her lack of human compassion was the problem. Then, Adir, while sleeping, dreamt about how Boss Captain had taken her in at a young age and forced her into adult industry. She woke up suddenly to find Boss Captain watching her. Adir was very startled. Captain said, "Did you think you could steal my money and run away? You belong to me." Captain told her to get dressed and let's go to the club so she could start paying back the money she stole. He then took her to a nearby club. While Adir was waiting for customers, Thomas and his friends walked in. Thomas was shocked to see Adir back in adults industry. He approached her and Captain, asking Adir what had happened. Adir told him to leave, saying she wasn't his wife, that his wife was dead. Thomas didn't listen and kept bothering Adir. Captain slapped Thomas, and a fight broke out in the club. At the same time, gunshots were heard at the church, and all the congregants ran away. The pastor's wife, upon returning home, cried and questioned her husband why he couldn't maintain peace in the town like her father did for many years. While they were still talking, Simi interrupted and revealed she was pregnant. Her mother slapped her and took her to the local doctor to confirm the pregnancy. On the way back home, the pastor's wife cried a lot. When they reached home, Simi's father told her they would raise the baby, but warned her never to make another mistake, threatening to throw her out if she did. The pastor's wife, still crying, called a young man from the church, who usually accompanied her to prayers, and told him that their God had abandoned them, starting with that woman Adir, and now Simi is pregnant. After the fight, Adir managed to escape and went back home to collect her things so she could run away. Suddenly, Captain entered her room and caught her trying to escape. He grabbed Adir, but she managed to hit him on the head with something, and he passed out. Consumed with anger over Adir, that young man from the church who was talking to Pastor's wife earlier went to Adir's house and set it on fire. Adir managed to escape, grabbing her essential belongings. Villagers arrived at the scene, and Thomas cried desperately. Adir emerged safely, and they embraced her. The villagers captured that young man who started the fire, beat him up, and he realized his grave mistake, breaking down in tears. The next day, the community showed Adir love, and the pastor's wife abandoned her foolishness. They invited Adir to church, marking the end of this Nigerian movie called Adir of 2023. Please don't forget to subscribe to Naija Flicks and turn on notifications to relive the magic in every video.